February 6, 1952. Treetops Lodge, Kenya. Elizabeth is watching the sunrise. Philip walks into the room. He has news, the worst kind. Her father is dead. She is 25 years old. In a single breath, everything changes. Her life becomes the crown. His becomes a question without an answer. The naval officer he loved being, gone. The future they imagined, gone. He would never walk beside her as an equal again. He was now the husband of the Queen. That is where this story begins. Act 1. The Dartmouth Spark. To understand that moment, we must go back to a summer when everything was still possible. July 1939, the Royal Naval College at Dartmouth. The King and Queen arrive with their 2 daughters. And there he is, Prince Philip of Greece, 18 years old, tall, blonde, quietly amused by everything. He moves with a freedom Elizabeth has never known. Her world is sheltered routine. His is open sea. She is 13 years old. She cannot stop watching him. He plays with a toy train set, then grows bored. He suggests croquet, calls it a filthy, vicious game. He jumps over tennis nets with easy grace. She follows him with her eyes. The royal yacht prepares to leave. The cadets take to the water to wave it off. Most turn back when ordered. One does not. Philip rows on alone, against the current. He chases the ship until he is a speck on the water. Elizabeth raises a pair of field glasses. She watches him until he disappears. The first letters come during the war. He writes from HMS Valiant. At the Battle of Matapan, his hand holds the searchlight steady. His crew survive because of him. His name is mentioned in dispatches, and with every letter her certainty grows. She places his photograph on her mantelpiece at Buckingham Palace. She is already decided. He visits Windsor. He brings the scent of the sea. They dance to the gramophone. He holds her around the waist. She feels for the first time like herself. By the summer of 1946, it is settled. A quiet proposal at Balmoral. Scottish heather. A yes, without hesitation. The king gives his blessing, but asks for patience. Not everyone is pleased. The courtiers whisper. He has no fortune, no proper name. But for Elizabeth, there was never anyone else. Act 2. The Bargain. The engagement is announced in July 1947. A court circular, matter of fact. But the price had already been agreed. To marry the heiress presumptive, Philip paid dearly. He renounced his Greek and Danish titles. He became Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten. He was naturalised as a British subject. The foreign prince was being unmade and remade. The wedding that November was a flash of colour in grey post-war London. Norman Hartnell's ivory silk gown, a 15-foot train, crowds desperate for a fairy tale. But behind the splendour, quiet surrenders. His naval career, the place where he was judged on merit, over. He moved into Buckingham Palace. One observer called it a gold cage. The courtiers were cold. They saw an outsider with no fortune and no history. The bitterest blow came later. Philip asked that his family take his name. The House of Mountbatten. Churchill refused. Lascelles refused. The House of Windsor would endure. Philip was incandescent. "I am the only man in the country," he said, "not allowed to give his name to his own children." He called himself a bloody amoeba. The wound was deep. It never fully healed. He tried to find usefulness. He modernized the household staff. He introduced new training, reviewed old systems. The old guard resisted him at every turn. But there were good years too. Clarence House, 2 children, Charles in 1948, Anne in 1950. He was a hands-on father. He read stories. He bathed them himself. And then Malta. A posting in 1949. Elizabeth joined him as a naval wife. He had command of HMS Magpie. For a few months they were almost ordinary. Parties, the Mediterranean, shopping with other officers' wives, their happiest time. But the king was failing. They were summoned home. "That's that," Philip said to his friend Mike Parker. The door to his old life closed for good. Act 3. The New Constellation. The king died in February 1952, and Philip's world contracted around him. He was told clearly, keep out. No access to the red boxes, no seat at the table of state. "I had to support the Queen," he said later, without getting in the way. He threw himself into patronages, committees, good works. He chaired the Coronation Commission. But the frustration was always there, just beneath the surface. The final symbol came on June 2nd, 1953, Westminster Abbey, the coronation. Elizabeth was anointed alone, St. Edward's crown placed upon her head. Then Philip knelt before her, in Admiral's uniform. He placed his hands between hers. "I become your liege man of life and limb." His voice was steady. He rose, he touched her crown, he kissed her cheek. Then he stepped back. That step back was everything. The sun was Elizabeth now. He was a planet in her orbit. His own light, still bright, now reflected. He made wry jokes on the royal tours. He asked difficult questions, challenged old customs. He was doing his best. But the man who had once commanded a ship now had to bite his tongue. He had very little authority of his own. He had chosen service, and service had consumed him. The unanswered question. By 1953, the transformation was complete. The price was fully paid. The naval officer was gone. In his place stood a man still learning what he was. A husband, a father, a consort, but not yet at peace. History would be kind to Philip eventually. It would recognize what he gave up. It would understand the cost, but that reckoning was still a long way off. For now, he walked 2 steps behind. He smiled when required. He served where he could, and he kept his private griefs private. But not everything could stay private. By 1955, rumours were circulating that the palace could not ignore. And Philip was at the centre of them. The wedding was celebrated across the empire. But what came after? No palace statement would ever explain. In 1956, Philip sailed away on a 4-month royal tour, alone. The palace said it was official duty. The press said otherwise. Across London, the whispers started. They spoke of a marriage under strain, of a prince chafing at his chains. The royal yacht Britannia carried him to the Antarctic, to Australia, far from the palace, far from her. But this is not a story about distance. This is a story about what fills it. Welcome back to Palace Whispers Stories. This is part 2 of the Elizabeth and Philip series, The Windsors, the years 1956 to 1977. One quiet question. What does it take to love a queen? The sacrifice. To understand 1956, we must go back to 1952. Overnight, the woman Philip had married was gone. In her place was a sovereign. His naval career, his name, his identity, swallowed whole. His new title was consort. There was no blueprint for this. Prince Albert had died nearly a century before. Philip had to invent the role himself. He was restless, full of ideas. But the old guard drew a clear line. Keep out. He was barred from the red boxes, excluded from affairs of state. Lord Mountbatten observed it plainly. Philip was deeply frustrated. Yet publicly he never faltered. He walked 1 step behind her. Always. His duty, as he understood it, support the Queen, first, second, and last. At home it was different. She gave him authority she gave no one else. He ran the household. He chose the children's schools. Charles would be sent somewhere that would, in Philip's words, toughen him up. He could be blunt, sometimes cutting. She learned to hold her own. One aide remembered hearing her say, "Oh, do shut up, Philip. You don't know what you're talking about. It was a marriage, a real one." She gave him authority at home because she had ultimate authority everywhere else. She understood what he needed. And so, when the 4-month tour was proposed, she encouraged him to go. The rumours. While Philip was away, the storm broke. His private secretary, Mike Parker, was named in a divorce suit. The tabloids ran with it. By association, Philip's long absence became a princely jolly. Stories circulated a party circle, a marriage in trouble. The palace issued a denial. Unusually direct, unusually urgent. It is quite untrue. But whispers don't die with a statement. Philip returned to a changed atmosphere. He was hurt. He was angry. The question of what he did or did not do in those years has never been fully answered. The palace did not answer it then. We will not answer it now. What we can say is this. From that turbulence, he built something. In 1956, the same year he sailed away, the Duke of Edinburgh's award was launched. It was his vision, his name, his philosophy. Young people, community service, physical challenge, purpose. He built it from nothing. That matters. He also became an early environmental voice, decades before it was fashionable. If we fail to meet this challenge, he warned, all other problems will pale into insignificance. This was his territory. She had hers. They had learned to live in parallel, overlapping but not entangled. A private language. And yet, something deeper held them together. They had built a language that belonged only to them. A certain look across a crowded ballroom, a barely perceptible smile, a signal no one else could read. When apart, they shared a private verse from the book of Genesis. The Lord watch between thee and me when we are absent from one another. It needed no explanation. At Balmoral, they were simply themselves. Philip at the grill, the Queen in yellow marigold gloves, washing the dishes. She would sit in the evenings playing Patience. He would move about the room, no ceremony, no performance. In 1957, she created him, Prince of the United Kingdom. It was not required. She chose it. Her quiet recognition of everything he had surrendered, everything he had carried. She used her power not to command him, but to honor him. The shifting. By the 1960s, new fault lines appeared. Philip pushed hard for the 1969 documentary Royal Family. He believed the monarchy had to be seen as human. To survive, it had to step forward. The Queen agreed, cautiously. The world watched them eat breakfast, laugh together, argue gently at picnic tables. It was Philip's instinct, his risk to take. That same year came the investiture of Prince Charles at Caernarfon Castle, the heir apparent, dressed in ermine, presented to the nation. Philip stood at a distance. His relationship with Charles had never been easy. He had tried to toughen a boy who needed tenderness. Charles felt it, the distance, the expectation. The investiture was a triumph for the crown. For the family, the moment was quieter. By the 1970s, something between Elizabeth and Philip had shifted. Not broken, not cold, but different. They had grown so completely into their roles that the roles had begun to shape them. She was more sovereign than ever. He had found his purpose. Largely outside the palace walls, they still had their language. But some evenings, perhaps, there was less need to translate. By the Silver Jubilee of 1977, the world saw triumph. Millions cheered a queen who had steered the monarchy through decades of change. The streets were full, the bunting bright. In the private rooms of the palace, something quieter had taken root. The restless naval officer had built a life of purpose around the throne. The young queen had become a sovereign of unshakable strength. They had mapped their distance, built a world with its own rules, its own language, a world where she was queen, but he was still Philip. They had survived the rumours, the separations, the scrutiny. They had found a way. But the hardest years were still ahead, and only one of them would be ready. They had survived what the press never fully understood, but the years ahead would ask something quieter of them, and harder. April 17th, 2021, St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. A woman in black sits alone in a wooden pew. She is 95 years old. A white handkerchief is folded in her hands. A mask covers her face, but nothing covers the emptiness beside her. The seat next to her is vacant. The whole world is watching. And the whole world understands. 74 years have just ended. To understand that empty space, we have to go back. We have to understand what filled it. The fortress. Act 1. The Diana years. The 1980s arrived like a storm. A young princess stepped into the light, the cameras turned, the crowds surged, and the monarchy began to fracture. But inside the palace, something else was happening. Elizabeth and Philip were growing quieter and closer. The glamour of Diana's era threw their marriage into sharp relief. While the world watched one kind of royal story, they were living another. Philip wrote to Diana, long, careful, private letters. He was trying to help her find her footing. He saw her vulnerability clearly. He also saw the danger in what she was becoming. A woman playing to the gallery in an institution that did not forgive it. He watched his son's marriage unravel with growing alarm, not only as a father, as a man who understood what the institution required. Charles and Diana's separation in 1992 was a public admission of a private failure. For the Queen, it was a dismantling of everything she had tried to hold together. But she and Philip did not unravel. Their marriage had been built in a different time, on different foundations. They had learned long ago to be steady when everything else was not. Away from the cameras, they managed the great estates together. Balmoral, Sandringham, Windsor. These were not just properties, they were anchors. A world they understood and controlled when the wider world did not behave. The marriage had become a fortress, and so far the fortress held. The fire. Act 2. Annus Horribilis. Then came the year the fortress was tested. The Queen would later call it her Annus Horribilis, her year of horror. 3 of her children's marriages collapsed. The press, once largely deferential, turned, and then, in November, Windsor Castle itself caught fire. Flames moved through ancient rooms that had stood for centuries. The Queen walked through the smoke-damaged corridors afterward. She looked, by every account, bereft. This was not just a building. This was childhood. Memory, the very heart of what she was. Philip was in Argentina when the fire broke out. He was on the phone immediately. He was always there, even when he was not in the room. Weeks later came the Guildhall speech. Standing before the Lord Mayor of London, the Queen allowed something rare. She allowed the world to see that she was tired. 1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure, she said. It was as close to public vulnerability as she ever came. And Philip stood beside her, steadfast, silent, present. The restoration of Windsor became their next shared project, a metaphor for what they had always done together. They did not break, they rebuilt. The retreat. Act 3. Wood Farm. Time does what it always does to storms. It softens them. In the summer of 2017, Prince Philip formally retired from public life. He was 96 years old. He had completed 22,219 official engagements. His final comment on the matter was entirely characteristic. "I've done my bit," he said. They retreated to Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate. It was his favourite place, modest, unpretentious, quiet, a world away from palaces and protocol. The routine they settled into had been earned over 7 decades. Reading, walking the grounds, tending the gardens. He painted watercolours and argued with the newspapers. She enjoyed, perhaps for the first time, an unhurried companionship, the kind that duty had always interrupted. Then came 2020, a pandemic, a lockdown. The world stopped, and Elizabeth and Philip found themselves together at Windsor uninterrupted for months. It was, by several accounts, something neither had fully expected. A gift, A return to something early and simple. Their world gradually narrowed, as the world does at the end. They accepted it quietly. They had always accepted things quietly. The last goodbye. Act 4, April 9th, 2021. Prince Philip died at Windsor Castle on April 9th, 2021. He was 99 years old, 2 months short of 100. He had planned his own funeral with the same clear-eyed practicality he brought to everything. His hearse was a modified Land Rover, a vehicle he had helped design himself decades earlier. Not a gilded carriage, a working vehicle. It was his last joke, his final signature. 30 mourners walked behind the coffin into St. George's Chapel. Pandemic restrictions had made the grandeur of a state funeral impossible. What remained was something smaller and, somehow, more true. Beat. The Queen did not walk. She sat alone in a wooden pew, in black, in stillness, a white handkerchief folded in her hands. The image moved around the world within hours. A woman of 95 sitting alone in a space where a presence used to be. Decades earlier, at the coronation, he had promised to be her liege man of life and limb. For nearly 74 years of marriage and a reign that would exceed 70 years, the following year he had kept that promise. His death was not a rupture, it was a fulfillment. The quiet closing of a private language only 2 people had ever spoken. The real marriage. So, was it a happy marriage? Yes, but not the kind that gets made into films, not a fairy tale. It was something rarer than that. It was a real marriage, built on duty, refined in fire, sustained for 74 years by something quiet and private and unbreakable. A woman in a pew, a white handkerchief, a vacant seat. That is what 74 years looks like.